Are you planning an upcoming presentation and you want to learn how to persuade like a pro? Well, this episode is for you. And welcome to the Lifelong Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership, and I am so glad you're here with me. Well, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about things that you need to keep in mind before you jump on stage for your next presentation. I want to give you these tips because these are the things that I learned over years and years of failing and not doing well. So first, before I jump into them, I want you guys to make sure that you connect with me on all of your social platforms. I'm Coach Molly with an E on Twitter, Three Pines Leadership, almost everywhere else. Connect with me. Let me know what's working, what's not working, what challenges are you finding, and what kinds of conflict is coming up in your life that I can help you unravel. All right, my friends. So let's get into my presentation tips. So I've told you before, yeah, I've gotten onto a few stages where I was too cocky to do any kind of work ahead of time. And I'll tell you a story about a time where my really, really good friend invited me to be a keynote speaker at an event that she was organizing. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was honestly the biggest stage that I had spoken on at that point, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I loved getting on stage and talking, and I seemed to be engaging, or at least in my experience up until that point, I definitely was. So I was like, I'll totally do this. I showed up literally 5 minutes before I was supposed to get on stage. So that was a dumb thing to do, first of all. Don't do that. And then as I'm talking, I realized my topic was really cool. The front of my slide was really cool. I had cool images, but I hadn't thought about how to actually get people to be moved. Within 5 minutes, people were yawning. People were like texting on their phones. Some guy left and then came back with food. Like he had gotten a whole pizza and he started like giving it out in the class. And I'm standing up there trying to teach them how to change the world and look good doing it. And I'm standing up there looking like a fool. That was a reality check. Thankfully, people still thought it was cool. I wasn't trying to persuade the audience to do much, but that experience changed my life because I never, ever, ever want to feel like that. I love the feeling of having my audience's attention. And that only comes from when you actually do work ahead of time. So these are my tips that I have come up with from years and years of thinking I was doing it right, but really not. So hopefully this will save you years and years of failures. The first thing I will tell you, I've told you this before if you've listened to previous episodes, but I will tell you to know your audience. Do that background information. Know as much about them as you can. Know what kind of lingo they use. Know what they're interested in. What's pushing them? What are their problems? And how can you provide solutions? If you don't understand that, then you're not going to be delivering a message that's going to resonate with them. Maybe you'll resonate with a couple people in the back row because you said a funny joke or something. But if you're not connecting on them with the level of substance, then they're not going to listen to you, first of all. When you're putting your presentation together, have a clear thesis in mind. Know exactly what information you want to present to them and how you need to present that information. What is the pathway you need to take them on? What is the journey they need to go through and information they need to learn along the way? So that at the end of your presentation, when you're trying to persuade them to do X, Y, or Z, they're going to follow you because it's logical. You have taken them on that route already. But if you don't know what your target is, you don't know what your objective is, you can't design that pathway for them. And going off of that, you also need to know what is your objective at the end. What is that call to action that you need them to take? Are you trying to get them to buy your product or sign up for your list or subscribe to your channel? What is the objective of that presentation? So knowing that will help you design that perfect journey to take them on through the presentation. So now if you know at the end of your presentation what action you want them to take, break it down and understand what their objectives might be, and break down the information, present it as good ideas, or these are benefits. So present the information in a way that isn't just, I need you to know this, and then sequentially, I need you to know this. Give them stories, give them reasons why they need to buy into that idea. If you give them baby steps that they'll buy into along the way, it's much easier to get them to tip over and take the action at the end of the presentation. I say this a lot. Avoid jargon. Avoid those industry terms. We as experts will easily fall into that space where we start to use words that make us sound smarter. Or in case I know myself, I'll just be completely honest with you. I know within myself, I like to use words that sound kind of like big words, but I do it because in my brain, it's more efficient of a way of describing exactly what I'm trying to speak on. I do believe in trying to be precise in your words, but when you're trying to persuade and you're trying to sell to your audience, you need to speak their language. So if you're speaking to a group of scientists, then yeah, totally use big scientific jargon words. But make sure that everyone in the audience understands what the words are and how they apply. So make sure that you have a group understanding or a group definition of the word. So sometimes if you're going to use those jargon terms in your presentation, at the beginning, go over them. Just define them so that everyone understands that we're talking about the same definitions and we're using the words in the same context. You can also completely avoid jargon and be more relatable in that term, but you have to first understand your audience and now design your language to reflect that. It's also a good idea to think about whether or not you're going to talk about your competition. Sometimes you can speak directly to about your competition. You can use their name and everyone in the audience is on the same page. But when it comes to a presentation where you're trying to persuade someone, it can be a little bit tricky of whether or not you're going to call out your opponent. I am now in this new wonderful mindset where I don't like to address my competitors. I don't like to think of them as competition because I like to set myself apart. I do something that's completely different than anyone else out there. And what I do is I provide it to a market that is not being served by anyone else right now. So that's how I set myself out to be uniquely different. And I become a peer of those around me instead of a competitor. So when you start to define yourself in that way, that's awesome. But if you haven't reached that phase yet and you're still just working your way presentation to presentation, then definitely think about whether or not it's a benefit to your presentation and a benefit to the information you're trying to present of whether or not you're going to talk about your competitor. The other tip I'm going to give you is to practice, practice, practice. Don't rely on your technology. Imagine that the worst case scenario happens and you have no microphone, no slide deck, and maybe even everyone in the audience is in their underwear and so are you. Just know your content. Find passion in it. Connect it to stories that are rooted in your own life, in your own experience, so that you'll be able to more easily flow through your presentation if all of the worst case scenario things can happen. Practice, practice, practice. So that finally when you get on that stage, you can rock it. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this little episode. I enjoy presentations, I enjoy getting on stage, and I love sharing this information with you guys. So if you found any value in it, please share this podcast with your friends, family, and coworkers, or maybe even your competition, and then let them in on why you have been crushing it. All right, everyone, I'm Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership. This is the Lifelong Podcast. Thank you again for tuning into this episode. I will see you again next time. Until then, remember, I love you. Be excellent to each other.